Welcome to the podcast, Restore Yourself, Restore Your Marriage, where it's all about discovering the thoughts that get you in the mood, the thoughts that get you out of the mood, and how creating a deeper connection with yourself creates a deeper connection with your spouse. I'm your coach, Shelly Anderson, coaching you through life, love, and intimacy. This is episode number 81. Get your mind out of the gutter.
Do I have to?
No, you do not.
I don't?
No.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Okay, but before we jump into this topic, we are filming this a day after Christmas. So I just want to point something out. I want you guys to think about how this last week went with your holidays. And if you found that things did not go as well as you had hoped and not according to your expectations, or if you found your stress levels were really high, go back to and listen to last week's episode, which was number 80, about healthy holiday boundaries. Because even though we had a ton of stuff going on, stress levels were not out of control. Like, they were totally manageable. And
speak for yourself.
I mean, definitely compared to other times before I had ever learned about boundaries. So if you had a very stressful week, take a moment to write down what you wish maybe would have gone a little bit better, and then go back and listen to number 80, and then see if you can come up with some healthy holiday boundaries for next year.
Or the next time you get together with your family. I mean, this applies to every day, not just holidays.
Yeah. So just take that little moment of reflection. But yeah.
Good.
And thank you for everyone who did watch this, the episode last week for the first time. And we know a lot of you guys did.
Our first YouTube episode.
Yeah, so thank you.
So
that was awesome.
This is episode 81, but episode 2 on YouTube.
Yeah.
We're still calling it episode 81. But
yeah,
we like the fact that being on video puts a little more pressure on us, and so we have to be on our A game.
And I have to pay attention to where I'm looking.
We're not just lying down in bed recording on our phone.
Not anymore.
This is serious. Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I want to say about this topic is that the minute I decided to start a podcast over a year ago, I knew I wanted to do this topic. It was on my list of all my ideas. I just didn't know exactly when would be the right week to do it. And there was no doubt in my mind, this was the week we were going to do it.
I can't wait to hear why this is the week.
Oh, you know the reason.
Well, I'm making some assumptions here, but I can't wait to hear them come out of your mouth.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Let's hear it.
Exactly. I know you can't wait for that, which is part of the topic. Okay, so we're going to talk about this phrase, get your mind out of the gutter. I'm sure most of us have heard this. I know I've heard this. I heard it growing up. I heard it several times in my teenage years, which is probably when it starts to show up in young adulthood. But I knew once I kind of started going into this topic of intimacy with couples, and especially with life coaching, I knew I was going to dive into this because it's so much about where our mind is, what our thoughts are. And when we hear this phrase, get your mind out of the gutter, it's also a huge assumption that somehow the gutter is bad, that it's dirty, and that it's wrong.
Well, gutters are usually dirty, and they get rid of, a lot of waste. So, I mean, I think it's natural for people to think of gutters as negative. But this is, again, it's kind of like a double entendre.
Yes.
Like most things.
Yes.
We're going to compare this to something else. And I also want to say one thing. Shelly and I prepare separately. I know what the topic is, and we both usually prepare separately. That way we can kind of bring different things to the table.
Yeah.
So when I have no idea what you're going to share. I just know what the topic was, and then I just prepared some things.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that yours is going to be a little bit more on the dirty side than me.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I'm getting that feeling right now, so I'm a little nervous about this and excited.
Okay, so I wanted to start off with definitions because I love to do that. And so I really wanted to dive into the definition of the word gutter, because true. We just think of, when we hear the phrase, get your mind out of the gutter, we assume gutter means dirty.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of change that a little bit. At least I want to offer that as an option to you, that the gutter itself is not always dirty.
So this is self-coaching 101, right?
Right.
Changing your mindset and your thoughts about something.
Yes.
Which is okay. And that's perfectly fine.
It's fabulous.
And I have some examples that I'm going to share about why that's okay.
Good, because I only have one specific, but it's a good one. Okay, so I want to start off with the definitions of the word gutter. A gutter is a trough along the eaves of a house or a building to catch and carry off rainwater. It's a low area, like at the edge of a street or a driveway, to carry off surface water. It's a trough or a groove to catch and direct something. Now, from like a bookmaking perspective, this is a different definition. A white space formed by the adjoining inside margins of two facing pages of a book. Another definition is a long, narrow section along the sides of a bowling lane.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. We forget about that.
That's where I spend
one.
most of my time when I bowl.
Right. That's not true. In the gutter. Now, here are two of the definitions that I think our mind automatically goes to. But I want you to hear how extreme this definition is, right? So one of these definitions for gutter is of the worst kind, offensive or immoral. And then the second one that is more on the negative side is marked by extreme vulgarity, cheapness, or indecency. Right? So we have these definitions that talk about like what a gutter actually is and what it does, right? It's like it transports, right? It's not where the dirt collects, right?
It transports it.
It's usually, well, it's not even always transporting the dirt. It's trying to move the water, at least on a house, away from the house, kind of to protect the house.
Yeah, it's protecting the house. Yeah.
And I think we forget that that's what rain gutters do. And I love how it says it's carrying off kind of the surface stuff, right? But we often, when we hear this phrase, like get your mind out of the gutter, we go to these definitions of, oh, that person must be thinking the worst thing.
So we're defining this automatically in our mind by choosing what the definition is. So
right.
You don't have to do that.
We don't have to do that, right? We go to it's an extreme, right? If we say get your mind out of the gutter, we may be going to this extreme definition of we are thinking the worst kinds of thoughts when it comes to sexual things. The worst. It says the worst kind. Or that we are thinking offensive sexual thoughts or immoral sexual thoughts. So that's kind of woven into that phrase. Or that when we are thinking sexual thoughts, that they are extremely vulgar, somehow cheap, or indecent. Okay? So what I find fascinating about this is we had an experience this week, right? The week before Christmas when we were, and I'm going to get into this later, but I'm just going to set it up, where we were surrounded by adults and we were having conversations about all kinds of things. And there came a moment where some comments were made where adults who wanted to take these comments and turn them into a sexual innuendo did. And it was very subtle. It started off very subtle, which was very exciting. And I'm going to go into what happened later. But there was a time where this phrase came in, get your mind out of the gutter. And I was like, oh, are you kidding? I want my mind in this gutter right now. Because
that gutter was appropriate for the people who were there.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And so I want to also talk about kind of just this definition of the word dirty, right? Because we think of gutters, our first thought is like this dirtiness. And so dirty means not clean or pure, likely to defile with a soiling substance, or that it contains impurities, that it's morally unclean or corrupt, dishonorable, acquired by illegal means, likely to cause disgrace or scandal, or that it's debased by distorting the real nature of something. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting because also, whenever someone says, like, get your mind out of the gutter, they're assuming we're having dirty thoughts,
Or evil thoughts that are actually immoral.
immoral, indecent, impure, and that it's like, oh, that it's wrong. We shouldn't be doing it.
Because my mind is in the gutter according to many definitions about you all the time, but it's not immoral.
Correct.
It's not wrong, and
Correct.
it's beautiful. But some people would say, if they knew what I was thinking, they would think, "Get your mind out of the gutter." If I said it, right? Sometimes even good things we shouldn't say, right? Because they're sacred. But sometimes we even call things that are sacred, which like sex and marriage. People assume that talking about that is taboo.
Yeah.
When, yeah, that might be in some situations, right? Sometimes we share too much of a sacred thing. And I have to admit, sometimes I probably share too much, but I never share anything specific about us. But I'll make those comments just to, have fun with it, or, to get a rise out of somebody like your mom or my mom or whatever, right? Or my sister-in-law. But that doesn't mean it's immoral, and it doesn't mean that you can't have fun appropriately, depending on who the audience is.
Right. So back to our experience this week, because I want to pull up a couple points about it that I thought were awesome. You're looking at my points,
Wow.
my notes.
You took notes.
I know, because it was fascinating.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. Okay, so yes, this week we were having dinner with all adults. There was a 1-year-old, so clearly they are not understanding.
Right.
And we did have 2 much older teenage boys.
Yes.
One also all over his head, no understanding of what we were talking about. The other is our oldest son. He's very aware of what we discuss and what our business is about. He got it. He understood. And at the same time, I was watching him during this, exchange of innuendos and conversation, and he was laughing hysterically. Now, I don't think he was thinking immoral things.
No.
He understood what was happening, but he also understands us.
Yeah.
And I think as he saw our reactions towards one another, he was like, oh, mom and dad.
He doesn't think, oh, mom and dad are in danger of, committing adultery or,
No, and I also
he doesn't think that at all.
And I also don't think he was thinking about he's not thinking about all kinds of stuff on his own, because he's very attuned to who's in the room, and everyone else was married there. Yeah. So during that dinner, there came a time where we had some passing out of gifts. And we did have a white elephant, a gift exchange, but then we got these beautiful, beautiful gifts. They were made of these pieces of bark of wood, and each
walnut wood.
Yeah, and I even think some of the wood was different, and each was shaped different sizes, different lengths, different girths.
And these were made by the Amish.
Yes.
In the Midwest, in Ohio. But get back to what you're talking about wood here.
That's right.
Okay.
Each piece of wood was unique and distinct, and some of it was painted with blue on the top and white. It almost looked like an ocean, and then the part of the wood that shone through looked like the sand, and each piece was unique, and they were all gorgeous. And so, yes, the topic of wood started to come up. And obviously, with what we discussed with intimacy and intercourse, we understand that once the word wood is brought up, our minds are going to go to what wood can signify. And so,
for those of you who don't know, wood is another way to say erection.
Right. So, we had a straight face, in the very beginning, and, we started looking around at the different sizes of wood, the different lengths of wood and such. And then there were some questions about the process of how it was all done, and, how the wood was polished. And I think that's where a lot of some of the adults that were picking up on the innuendo, we decided to go with the straight face and continue the comments and the innuendo with the specific questions. And this went on for a good 5 minutes at least.
Yeah.
and with different people making different comments, and I was loving it. I was loving every minute of it. And this is why most of my clients that come to me love their husband, but really struggle with feeling that natural and inner desire to want to be intimate. They feel like they should, and they know that they want to, but then it's like it's that inner struggle, but they don't feel it. And a lot of them don't think about it, and they don't want to think about it. And so when we allow our mind to be able to look for sexual innuendo in innocent comments, it actually helps our mind in a very positive and beautiful way to think about intercourse with your husband. And that's why I loved this experience, because we weren't talking about porn.
Mm-mm.
We weren't talking about sexual positions. We weren't being vulgar. We weren't being graphic. I mean, if anyone outside was listening, they would think we were having a very normal and decent conversation about this art. Like if you didn't have sexual innuendo and you didn't go there, you wouldn't think anything bad about our conversation.
No.
But during it, what my mind is doing is I'm actually thinking about some of the things that we're talking about with this wood. And not only am I thinking about it, I am connecting it to you. And so during that whole process, I'm smiling, I'm laughing, I'm looking at you. We're sitting closer. We're connecting because I know you're thinking it too. We're all thinking very similarly. So we're laughing, we're giggling. We're not trying to make other people feel uncomfortable. That's not the point.
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is
for me, but that's one of my weaknesses.
But in this particular situation, we weren't trying to do that, but we were really enjoying this whole experience without it being all these things that we naturally think when we hear the phrase, get your mind out of the gutter. So what I realized is that my mind was totally in the gutter, right? Like we were talking about all these sexual innuendos, and I took all that information, which people could take that as very surface, right? Oh, it's just about sex. I channeled it. I chose to direct it towards you. I did that. I didn't do it. I didn't tell anyone else what to do. I didn't tell you what to do. I chose to do that in my mind. This is the power of thought work.
This is something that has evolved over the years too, as you've worked on this.
Yes.
And I've seen it, and I've seen your comfort level with it change because you have chosen to think about certain things differently. And you're at a point now where you're able to have fun with things that you may not have had fun with 15 years ago.
100%. And I did not grow up this way at all. I did not grow up with parents that ever talked in sexual innuendo. And I did not think about things that way at all. Like this is a conscious choice that I made, that I was like, I'm going to try and think about things with some sexual innuendo. I wonder can I do it? Yeah. It's a fun challenge for our brain. And when we can do it, it's so fabulous, because I think also too, what I see my clients struggle with is that they don't have positive outlooks on intimacy. They want to, but they don't. So they view it very much as like, well, it's just for him, or it's duty. Like this is such a different way to be able to allow thoughts of being sexual with your spouse to be fun and playful, and you're laughing and smiling. It's all these wonderful emotions inside, but it's all related to this. It's not oh, I'm so lustful right now, and oh, I just want to take off all your clothes. And it's not that. It was just so different. And I think we forget that that's possible.
It's interesting because I know that, our intimacy is, strong. I think we, have a powerful sexual relationship. It hasn't always been like that, and it's not always like that. And I honestly don't even remember if that night Yeah, we did?
It's that night.
Oh, it's that night.
I'm bringing that back up.
Okay, you're going to bring that back up again.
Yeah.
But I will say this. It didn't have to happen that night, right? It wasn't like we were having this conversation and we're kind of joking about it and we're connected and it was like, oh, I have to jump your bones right now. It wasn't like that. It doesn't have to be that way, but it ended up being that way.
Yeah.
But if it didn't happen that night, it would have been okay. And
Right.
I would have been okay.
Right. Because being able to experience those moments was so fulfilling.
Yeah, totally.
It was so fun, so enriching, lively, joyful. It was just wonderful to experience that.
I want to read part of this.
Yes.
And I know this is going to be a little bit off the direction you're going, but one of the things that I think is so important for men and women, for different reasons this is important. But one of the first ways we can have a healthy sexual relationship, especially as spiritual people who believe in God,
Yeah.
is to see sexuality as a gift from God,
Yeah.
specifically. And I think it's because of a lot of things, but I want to read something by a man named James E. Talmage. He is a very intelligent man, and he was also an apostle. But this is what he said. He said, he taught that we, quote, look upon these bodies of ours as gifts from God. And he's a Latter-day Saint leader and apostle. And so we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And those of you that are, you'll probably know who James Talmage is. But those of you who aren't, just think of him as a Christian leader. But he says, we do not regard the body as something to be condemned, something to be abhorred. It is peculiar to the theology of the Latter-day Saints and of Christianity, I believe, in general, that we regard the body as an essential part of the soul. And that's a close quote, but then I just want to read this. The goodness of sexuality is determined by what we do with this gift.
I love that.
We can use our sexuality to uplift or demean. And I think the question about what it means to demean might be different for different people, and what it means to uplift will be different for different people. But it can be used in different ways. And it's not just either or. There's a lot of range here.
Yeah.
Learning to love and be loved through the body is foundational to our spiritual and relational capacity and allows us to experience something of divinity through such profound love. It is also critical to happiness in marriage. While many instinctively fear pleasure, the reality is that God wants this for us in the context of marriage because it is a blessing to us, because it sustains us, and because God wants us to have joy. Now, one more quote from Parley P. Pratt, who's also a religious leader from like the 1800s. He said, the fact is, God planted in their bosoms those affections which are calculated to promote their happiness and union. And I think having fun with it is part of that joy.
Yeah.
Right? He's not like, these two leaders are very well respected leaders in our church. They would never say anything that would demean, right? But they're saying our bodies are gifts and sexuality is a gift. And these natural passions that we have are meant to bring us joy and bring us together. And however that happens, if it's bringing us together, awesome. That's great. That's great. And I think everybody can decide what that means for them in their relationship. But I'll say, when you have a female and a male, and the expectations at the beginning of marriage and how that evolves, they're very different. But over time, it's possible to really become one in those expectations and how we use our bodies to express that love. And so after 20 years of marriage, I think, the way that we see this is much different than when we first got married.
Oh, yeah.
Because it constantly evolves. And part of that is letting your mind go to the gutter, not the demeaning part, not the dirty part, but to have fun and to express this desire that we all have and to be open about it and honest about it in a way that excites us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you tied in the word joy also, because as soon as you said that, I instantly thought back to that dinner and I was like, I was full of joy.
Mm-hmm.
I was full of joy thinking about intimacy with you. And in that funny context where we're all being very adult. Talking about art. And yet,
And wood.
yes, art and wood, and it was just fabulous. I was absolutely filled with joy. And so it really does in my mind, and I wrote these questions down. In these situations where we can choose to think sexual innuendos about things that are not related to sex, right? We choose to do that. Most of the people that started off the comments, they were not thinking sexual innuendo.
They were actually innocent, but those of us who were not so innocent helped them get there.
And so, as I'm looking at these definitions, right, of the gutter and the dirtiness, is thinking about intimacy with your spouse, is that the worst kind of intercourse to be thinking about, right? Because that was like one of the definitions of gutter, the worst kind.
No.
That's the best kind to be thinking about.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about intercourse with somebody else. You're not, in those moments, if you choose to channel your thoughts towards your spouse, you're not thinking about porn.
Well, I'll tell you this, from a man's perspective, to be able to have those conversations and have fun like that is a dream come true, I think, for most men. And the men that don't think that that's appropriate, well, that's okay. You can think that. But I think naturally, again, our natural affections are to be in a place where we're comfortable about it so that we can express ourselves in appropriate ways, which is in many ways something that men naturally are into.
Yeah. And so as I was thinking about it, I'm like, this is the best kind of intimacy to be thinking about. And I was so grateful the opportunity came to me. I wasn't expecting that to happen that night. I wasn't planning on it. Like I wasn't at home going, I'm going to make sure I make some sexual innuendo tonight, to increase my desire. I wasn't planning on that, but I was so grateful it happened. It's not the most offensive type of intimacy. It's the least offensive because it's within the marriage bounds. It's what marriage is. One of the things that we're asked to wait for to do is for marriage, is to be involved in that. So it's great to be able to think of that. Is it the most immoral? No, this is the moral type of intimacy to be thinking about.
Well, I was taking some notes here, and the second point that I wrote down of having a healthy sexual relationship in marriage was seeing sexual intimacy as a developmental process and a shared goal. And this is just something that I've learned over the course of our marriage, but I think this is true for most people. But couples who consider healthy sexual fulfillment to be a goal that they work on together, for us, it has been a journey that is never ending, right? So it's not boring.
Right.
And sometimes it takes some of those conversations that are appropriate, but still, maybe funny, or you bring the humor in, but also, between us, it's sexy, right? Super
sexy.
I know what you're thinking, and I know that you're at that place where you're into it and you're ready to go, right? And like I said earlier, it didn't necessarily mean that I was expecting to, go to the bathroom, at the restaurant. And I mean, it's not like that at all, right?
Right.
But the fact that we're having these conversations is part of the journey that we're on, and learning about each other. That's part of the thing that will bring us a lot of joy and fun in it as well. Because it should be fun. And then one more thing, some may be more comfortable in their sexuality than others. And that's okay, right? Others may be totally ignorant in what it means even for their spouse sexually, because they just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
But and yeah, I mentioned that how talking about sex might be taboo, and a lot of people don't even talk about sex before they get married, so they don't even know what to expect. You just have to just jump in with both feet, and hopefully things work out. But I think most of the time, things aren't going to be smooth sailing, all the way through. Right? You're going to discover things that may be really difficult for you as the woman, or me as the man. Being married to somebody who's having a problem with this.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the journey, and that's okay. But anyway, I think it takes time, and I think that it takes discovery of one another. And I think you have to respect each other too, right? So if I start talking about something that makes you feel uncomfortable, I need to know that. And I need to have patience with you, right? Because maybe you'll never be comfortable with talking about it in front of other people. But talking about it with just me and having fun with it, that might take some time.
Right.
But that's okay. But having healthy gutter thoughts for married couples where it's appropriate, that is perfectly okay.
Yes. That's what I love about this podcast is the gutter itself is not dirty, right? Usually it's, again, sometimes the dirt, maybe little pieces end up there, but a lot of times it's like we're assuming the drain where the dirt lands. That's not actually the gutter.
Right.
And so I really like this idea of being able to use it as a channel. Where do we want our thoughts to go?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that also, one of the other reasons I really wanted to do this topic is that when we hear the phrase, like, get your mind out of the gutter, it also sends a message of, don't think about that. Right? So we were already taught, probably if we grew up with strong moral values, don't think about sex, right? There are some parents out there that sat down and they did their duty or their job and tried to teach their kids about sex at a young age. But a lot of parents were never comfortable to do that.
They let the friends of their children teach them.
They let the 6th graders and the junior high kids teach them. And so, but when we hear the phrase, get your mind out of the gutter, then it's like, oh shoot, I'm not supposed to think about that. Now that does a lot of damage. And it can if you don't actually take the time to undo that or challenge that thinking, right? When you're married, it's totally appropriate to think about sex. It's the time appointed to grow and develop this side of ourselves. So when we hear this phrase, don't get your mind out of the gutter, why?
Yeah, why?
Why do that? Because this is the time I'm supposed to be learning about this side of myself and developing it more and, including you and like having this type of interaction and working towards that goal. It's a process, and we don't want to keep sending the message out, don't think about intercourse, because this is why. In the self-coaching model, our thoughts trigger our emotions. If we are never thinking about intercourse with our spouse, we are never going to be feeling desire to be intimate with our spouse. If we are always blocking that, we are always blocking natural desire to be intimate. And we don't realize that. But whenever this phrase is just blurted out like this, we're still sending this message, hey, don't think about sex. Well, we're all adults.
That's terrible advice.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to think about sex in a good way.
Yeah.
This is the perfect way to do it, is through innuendo. And we don't want to just cut off. We don't want to send out this message that just cut off the thinking about it. We need to challenge our thinking about it. We need to say, how do I want to think about it? What's a fabulous way for me to think about it? What's a fun way for me to think about it? Not just don't think about it.
Right. Yeah, how can I think about it differently? And challenging yourself to do that. And asking your spouse, right? How can I don't know, how can I improve? How can I be better? And asking yourself how you're a problem for that other person. And it's okay if you struggle, but the beauty is you don't have to in the long run.
Right.
And it might take time, like I just said earlier. This is a process, but being able to loosen up, so to speak, over time is really, really important, and it will change your relationship. And for men out there, I'll just say this, this self-coaching model of learning how to change your thoughts and change your perspective about things, I don't think there's anything that you can do that's better for intimacy other than just being committed to the person. That's obviously the most important. But once you're committed to the person, you're committed to be one flesh. And you're commanded to do that if you are a religious person, right? And those that have a hard time with it, I totally get that that's a reality. And husbands, if it's your wife that's having a hard time with it, give her some time, be patient, right? Focus on, where you are together, and maybe it's not even intercourse that you're starting with. Maybe you're trying to start over your intimate relationship and you don't even focus on the intercourse side, right? Think about exploration together, and there's a lot of other steps before intercourse that you can fully enjoy. And I'm not going to get into the details of this now, but in your course you get into more details about this. I just think it's an awesome journey, and getting your mind more in the gutter when it comes to the flow of the water of life, right? I think, and I've talked about this in one of our podcasts. I can't remember which episode it was, but I talked about, we talked about me receiving revelation after we, have intercourse, right? Yeah. And to some people that might seem so taboo to say that, but why not? Why not?
Yeah.
One more quote, and then I'm going to drop this paper in my notes, but another Parley P. Pratt quote.
Yeah.
Our natural affections are planted in us by the Spirit of God for a wise purpose.
I love that.
They are the very mainsprings of life and happiness. They are the cement of all virtuous and heavenly society. They are the essence of charity or love.
I love that.
So whether or not you think about it in terms of your mind in the gutter or not, going on this journey with your spouse and really trying to connect and open up and find that place where you can be united in your intimacy, whether it's sexual intimacy or not, whatever it is, that is the essence of the plan and why marriage is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about sex outside of marriage, right, that's a different thing. We're talking about marriage here, and for people who are preparing to be married someday. And anyone who's listening to this that's not married yet, I encourage you to have that conversation with your fiance. When you get engaged and you get ready to get married, have this conversation. Start talking about it. Now, if it's going to tempt you to, do something that you shouldn't do before marriage, then, be careful. But part of the commitment to get married is to become one with that person. And I think it is the most spiritual thing that we can do in this life. And so if we're struggling with it, it's something that we need to overcome.
Yeah.
We just do. It's a fact. And if you don't know how to do that, then
take our course.
Take the course.
Right. We dive deep into that.
Yeah.
So I just want to make a few more points about how I experienced and what I felt throughout that dinner once the sexual innuendo started. So I started smiling. Not that I wasn't smiling before, but it increased. I was laughing. We were playful. We were closer. I was thinking about being intimate with you. Like, I was thinking about it. We were talking about it. All the comments were coming. And it didn't just last for 1 minute, right? It definitely was like 5 minutes where this kind of went on. And then it got brought back in, later on in the conversation, we'd kind of bring it back around. So it was able to be brought back up to my attention again. So the beauty of this is because I was thinking about it, I was feeling it. So desire was like brewing. It was percolating, right?
Yeah.
And I want to point this out for the women, right? You weren't at home doing dishes.
Right.
I didn't give you my honey-do list, right? Because a lot of my clients are like, look at all the things my husband didn't do that he should be doing. This is innuendo. Like, we were talking about art made out of wood. And because I was able to allow my mind to take these comments and turn it towards intimacy with you, my desire was high. And I think this is such a key point that so many of women miss is they think it's all about, it's the men.
No.
They're making all the comments. They are just lustful. They're these wild beasts and I need to tame them. And I'm just the victim of their lust, right?
Yes, please.
Like, I felt it.
Yeah.
I felt it, and it wasn't you trying to get me to feel it. It wasn't like, maybe if I say something like this, she will feel it. No. When we are able to think about intercourse in a way that we choose, you didn't tell me how to think about it. Nobody told me how to think about intercourse. I chose how to think about it. And I thought about it exactly how I wanted to. Beautiful, romantic, meaningful. So yeah, my desire, it was being lit, and it was getting fueled that whole time. So it was like really, really strong for, those 5 minutes. And then it kind of went back a little bit. And then with each comment, it like brought it right back up to the surface. Now, that dinner lasted a total of 2 hours, right? Now, after that dinner was over, we had to go get our kids.
Yeah.
Right? The reality is there. It's not like, oh, we never had kids with us. We didn't have to put them to bed. We didn't have to deal with the fighting and the whining. No, we still had to deal with all of that. We still had to deal with dishes in the sink and a messy house. The whole time that desire had already been ignited. Later on, when we were putting the kids to bed, I was thinking about that night. I was thinking about that conversation. So guess what else happened? I was smiling again. I was laughing again. I was thinking about intercourse again. So guess what happened to desire? All right there. Now, were you doing my honey-do list? No.
I think I went to bed early.
You did go to bed early.
I did. I was tired.
I think this is such a funny, awesome point, right? Nick went to bed early, at least an hour before I did. Not because I was up doing chores, right? That's not it. You were really tired that day. You just were like, I didn't even know that you had gone to bed that early. And so I was feeling all this desire, and it was the brewing. So I go to the bedroom, and I was like, hubby's asleep. No good. This is no good.
So you woke me up.
I woke this one up. I was like, get up.
And I'm like, oh.
Mama's feeling the fire. Get up.
Okay.
I woke him up. So, do I do this all the time? Do I wake you up all the time?
No, it's pretty rare, actually.
Right.
I mean, usually you don't wake me up. If I'm asleep, or you're asleep, we're pretty respectful of that. But you were ready to go.
Yes. So, I really hope that the women who struggle with feeling a natural desire really get the point of this, right? Because if I think about how I was when we first got married, I was not like this.
No.
This is something I've consciously chosen to work on and develop. And it works. You make the decision, you challenge your thinking, and it works. And so over time, you start to realize, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I don't have to feel that I'm doing it for duty, or that I'm all these things, that I'm just the victim of your lust and I just have to give in and whatever. We can enjoy feeling our own desire ignited within us by our own thinking. It's amazing. I felt amazing. It feels amazing to feel that for yourself.
And when you're feeling amazing about that, I feel amazing. For sure.
That's right. So I just want to offer this as an option for anyone listening. If you are married, get your mind in that gutter. Dive into that gutter. Swim in this gutter. This is totally the right time to be in that gutter. It's appropriate. It's moral. It's spiritual. It's fun. It's playful. And sometimes when we really struggle with intimacy, and if we have felt like have been doing it out of duty, we don't think about it in the fun and playful and silly ways. We find that really hard. And so I would love to offer this to you, anyone who's listening, that look for innuendo. Look for a way to find the sexiness of phrases that are not related to sex. Find it and then channel your thoughts so that they are connected to intimacy with your spouse. That is what fuels your own natural desire to be intimate to be released.
Can I add something? Because we've been married for almost 20 years. And, I think a lot of people, their marriages don't last because they're not willing to work at it. And I think that's often just the main problem, is that they just don't work at it. One or the other feels like they're bored, or they don't trust the other person, or all these different things that I think marriages go through. And I think the main reason is because they're not going on this journey together, and they're just expecting things and assuming things and blaming and all the things that happen when we don't do our thought work. But when we're working on this together, I fall in love with you more and more every day because we're working on it. Not only that, I also see you as more and more beautiful because you are going through this transition. I'm going through this transition. And I believe that as you do this work, you can fall more and more in love, or choose to be more and more in love. I mean, we know that love is a verb and it takes work. But also for men, right? Like, of course, we want to be more and more attracted to our wives. And so we both have to do this work. But I'm telling you, women, if you want your husband to be more and more attracted to you, go down this path, right? Go on this journey with him. And he will see you as more and more beautiful every day, and he will never get bored.
That's such
if
a
we
great point.
choose to go on this together. It's not like one or the other, right? You have to do this together. Now, sometimes it starts with one and the other joins in, but the work that you can do will bring miracles into your life that and levels of satisfaction and closeness that you never thought were possible.
Yeah. Any other final points that you want to make?
No, I'm good. This is a good one.
Yes, this is a fun one. There's one point that I don't have written down, but as you were talking, it just came to my mind so strongly. And it has to do with personal growth and self-development. And as I was really working on creating my first course that's about to come out, hopefully this week, called Restore Yourself. So it's very much a take on this podcast, right? Restore yourself, restore your marriage. And so the first course is all about restoring yourself first. It's really hard to fix a marriage when you feel like you're broken inside, that something's not working. And so as I was developing this course, I really had this idea of developing. And part of development, as I was doing this research, was talking about high bloom. And it talks about being fully expressed. And that concept to me is just so beautiful. And the sexual side of it is part. It is really hard to be a fully expressed person, a fully developed human in high bloom, if you never think about intimacy and you're just suppressing everything, or you feel like you're just doing it for someone else. And so when you really start to make that decision for yourself to say, hey, I'm going to work on developing this side for myself, that's when you start to really grow and really come into this level of high bloom of being more fully expressed. It doesn't mean it's done. It means you're in that process. Yeah. And it's so beautiful because I look at where we are now. We're more fully expressed. We're still developing. It's not like, oh, well, you learned this, now your development is done.
No,
not
even close.
It's this process. And I think that there are times when it's like I feel very fully expressed, especially when it comes to this side. But then maybe it goes back down a little bit, and then I have to reignite it to get back to being fully expressed and to feel like I'm really in this state of high bloom. But I love that concept of being able to get there, and that the sexual side is part of it. Because again, if you're really repressing that, you're never going to be a fully developed and fully expressed person.
Well, and if you're working on it, you have a lot to look forward to.
Yes.
Right? Like, I know that even into our old age, we have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly going to be working on this. And even when we have our bad days, which we do, I know that those bad days or bad weeks get shorter and shorter and shorter because we're learning how to get out of that faster and making choices of how to think about things. And so those downtimes don't last as long. But over time, the excitement of what the future holds is not boring at all. And also, when the kids are grown and they're out of the house, a lot of times we're like, oh, this is going to be so hard to just be with my spouse. It doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
And so in some ways, we're preparing for a lot of different things, but we're also preparing for those times when it's just us, right? And we have to be entertained by each other.
Right.
Which we're learning is it doesn't end. Like we're constantly able to find fulfillment together.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
That's very awesome. Well, I hope this next week you will look for opportunities to get yourself in the gutter, get your mind in the gutter, and see if you can find some opportunities to find sexual innuendo and really channel your mind and your thoughts to think about intercourse with your spouse in the most beautiful way that you want to. And I know that as you do that, your natural desire to be intimate will start to flow more freely. So remember, the more you restore that type of intimacy with yourself, the more you restore it with your spouse. Thank you so much for listening today, and we hope you will join us again next week.